Gandalf's materialised the instant that I've turned on the studio lights and am getting back into work. So I'll start the video off with a cat cameo. And hello! I'm back again to make some new art. And just in case I don't already have enough sketchbooks on the go, here's a couple of new ones to add to the pile. Sent to me by Arrtx. I thought I would accept these ones because I've already tried out 2 other sketchbooks by them. I made videos on these ones last year, and I thought I might as well get a full set of them. There are 4 in their collection in different sizes, so here are the other 2. Might as well take a look at them all, so let's get into it! The first book I got last year is the smallest. It's a bit smaller than an A6, but it still has 300 GSM paper. It is 100% cotton watercolour paper, and this one is in a hot press. They're very nicely bound, and it has a plain paper cover here, which is not watercolour paper. That does cause a little bit of an issue, but otherwise the paper itself is very nice, and you can see it's perforated as well. Here's the other one that they sent me a bit later in the year. I think it was around May last year. This is in a larger square format. It's also 300 GSM cotton paper, and it is cold press, so it's going to be a little bit rougher than the hot press. It opens up exactly the same, and I do have to say that the covers of these books are really beautiful. And once again, the watercolour paper is protected by that plain paper cover on the front, which admittedly is a bit of a pain because it just does not want to stay open, especially when the book is brand new. But that's really the only gripe that I had in this book. The paper itself is lovely. You can see that cold press texture on there. It is significantly rougher than the hot press that they have, and I'll bring the other one over so you can see the 2 papers side by side. Very much a noticeable difference. And here's what they look like today. I've filled a few pages in the smallest one, and I'll just flip through those now. So we've got that inside cover, and then I've called this one Becky's Little Sketchbook, which I started a year ago, January 2025. When Squid Game was in its final season. Originally did a single sides, but then I've started painting on the back as well, because I just really don't like having a blank page on the left-hand side, so I'm just filling the entire book up. I did a few pages in it before the book got put to one side when I got a bit tired last year. This page was a hot mess and I ended up redoing it, but I do like this page spread. And this was in a video last year, I can't even remember when now, but that's pretty much where I'm up to. I've still got quite a lot to go in the book. But moving on to the square pink one, which is the cold press paper, this one I started in May of last year, and I put my title page on that front cover, which isn't the watercolour. Here are some of the paintings on the cold press, a much improved leaf painting from that other book where it was a total mess, and a few other ones that I did on camera at some point around then, and these 2 I did in my own time, adding in some glitter pen on the right hand side there. I really like the whiteness of the paper in these books because it makes the colours look so bright, and I've got heaps to do in this book. Once again, I'd lost my motivation, so I kind of put it to one side, but I really want to get back into them. I guess we'll see how I go with that. But just to add to the fun, now I've got 2 new books and I might as well open them as well and see what they're like. I mean, if I wasn't filming, I would probably just open and use one book at a time, or maybe one hot press and one cold press, but for the purposes of this review, I'm going to open them all and show you all of the books that they have in their range. Just bear in mind, it's not usual for me to have this many books on the go. We have 24 pages of 100% cotton hot press paper in this rather tall and narrow sketchbook. I don't think these are standard dimensions because I looked it up and I couldn't find anything that it associates to, like an A6 or A5 or whatever. I think this might be an envelope size or something. It's really weird. So I'd say this is the least conventional size out of all 4 books. A tall, skinny portrait, and yes, mine has a ding on the corner, that's very sad, but I do love that lovely green colour, and the retro pattern on the front. Once again, this book has hot press paper, so it's pretty smooth, and it's pretty much exactly the same as this tiny book here, if I can find a blank page. I was just holding them up so you can see that it is identical paper. There is a little bit of a texture on it though, so it's not completely smooth like some hot presses. Once again, that inside paper is a little bit annoying. Now, these books do not lay flat very well because of the way it's bound, and that may well be a deal breaker for you if you want a lay flat book. I mean, it will go flat, but not easily. It does take a bit of effort. This last book is the largest of the 4, and I'm pretty sure its dimensions are the equivalent of an A5, so this is a bit more of a standard size book, and many of the sketchbooks that I've worked out of are A5, so I think it's a really good size. Why is plastic always so hard to peel off when I'm on camera? Taking a closer look at the details, it's 24 pages again. It's definitely an A5, 300 GSM, hot press paper once again. I was expecting this to be cold press, so that there'd be 2 and 2. But I was wrong. Now, I think this is the prettiest book of the 4 of them, mainly because I just love red, and that blue is really pretty as well. But look at the back of that, it's gorgeous. Such a lovely book, and it has such beautiful thick paper in with that smoother hot press texture, although you can probably still see a bit of texture on the paper, and these are perforated as well, which I do quite like. And inside it's identical to the other 3 books. And here is the entire collection of Arrtx Watercolor Sketchbooks. I think they all look really lovely, and I really like their cover designs. But weirdly enough, these 2 books have no writing on the spines, whereas these 2 do. These both say Watercolor Sketchbook embossed on the side there, but the other ones don't have that. That's just an odd thing I noticed, otherwise they're identical in every other way. But I'll focus my attentions on these 2 new ones that I have, and it kills me to start 2 new books when I haven't finished the other 2. I'm doing this purely for the video, as I mentioned before. I couldn't even decide which one to start in, but in the end I'm going for the small one first, and then we'll go for the large one later. I dug around to my watercolor stash, and I'm going to be using this cloverleaf box, which I have filled with Sennelier watercolor paints. This is the first set of Sennelier that I ever owned, and there was enough of them to fill this cloverleaf, plus a couple of extra holes that I carved into it myself. And this palette is looking very messy, but I do enjoy using it, as you can probably tell. Although I remember why I don't film with it, because it is very cumbersome to use on my desk. It's just too big, but I just pulled out the insert there, and I'll just put that over to one side, away from the camera. I also rediscovered this mechanical pencil set that I reviewed last year about this time too, and I thought I would just grab one of the pencils out to draw with. And then I'll just gently bend the pages over a bit so that I can get the book to lie flat nicely. There is a bit of a gap on this side though, so the way I get around this is just to grab a clip. Any clip will do. I'll just put it on the corner there, and that will hold that cover page out of the way, and I can start on that brand new front page. And yes, I am starting on the first page. Go big or go home. And the picture I'm drawing is from this photograph I took of a magpie who came to visit while we were sitting in a cafe. And I thought the dimensions of the bird would fit on this page quite nicely, being fairly long and tall. I found this particular book to be the most challenging because it is an unconventional size that I'm not used to. It wants long, tall things, or if you laid it on its side to make it landscape, it would be more of a panoramic landscape, so I might try that in a future video, doing some of those. It means turning the book around, but I just saw that magpie and thought it would be perfect for this particular book. And I eventually got my sketch to look how I wanted it to. Of course, when I first started painting it, I was feeling a bit rusty, and I made a bit of a mess of the beak. I've made a mix of sepia and Payne's Grey to get a more neutral black to match the magpie. I really like Sennelier's Payne's Grey, but it is very blue leaning, so I wanted a more neutral black, and mixing in some of that sepia brown really got the right colour that I wanted. I added in water for the belly because that is a lighter area, and then I just let the watercolour run. It is hot press paper, so it doesn't run quite as well as the cold press, but it still did a pretty good job, and the paint dispersed nicely in the water over the paper. It is also summertime in Melbourne. It's very dry and very warm here, so my paint was drying extremely quickly, and that does have a bit of an effect on the way that the paint will set in the paper. But otherwise the paper behaved exactly as I expected, and there were no surprises. Because the magpie is black and white, I decided to go for a bold background, and I'm using this very acidic green colour, which I then mixed in with some of that even louder green there. It's such an unnatural colour, but I decided to leave it as it is because I just really like the bright background on this. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's just an abstract background for the magpie to be against. And I just really wanted to have some bright colour to contrast with the black and white of the bird. I let this completely dry for a few hours, and now I'm going over everything with some Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils. I really wanted to get more detail in and include some nice grey shading along with white and black, so I just felt like I was going to get a better result using coloured pencils over the top of the watercolour, and I'm really glad I did this. The hot press paper is smooth enough that pencils work nicely on it as well. That was the other thing I was trying out, because I find that if the paper's too textured, then coloured pencils will be hopeless and not fun at all to use, but on this particular paper, they worked nicely. Now there is still some tooth in this paper, so I imagine you could probably add a lot of pencil layers and blend with odourless mineral spirits. I didn't do that today, I was just blending out with the white pencil for the most part, but I do think I want to try a full coloured pencil piece in this sketchbook at some point and see how they behave on this paper. I think it's going to be really good. I've used coloured pencils on other hot press cotton watercolour paper and they've been perfectly fine. I do find though that adding a layer of watercolour first just makes the whole process so much quicker. You can get those base colours in very quickly, let it dry, and then add the details over the top with the coloured pencil, so that is my preferred way to go. I did leave a bit of pencil texture there to show the feathers a little bit, and the claws weren't looking very good, so I was using the pencils to tidy those up and make them look a bit more defined. And overall this paper was very pleasant to work on, no issues, it was nice and easy, and the colours stand out brightly on it because it is mostly white. It's leaning slightly to the cream, but not as much as some other watercolour paper where it's that really yellow colour, and I'm not a big fan of that. I much prefer my watercolour paper to be nice bright white, because then you can really see all of the colours without that warm undertone on everything. Sometimes I want cool tones as well. Just finishing up here and there, making it look a bit more blended and smooth. Writing the date of January 2026, and here is the first page completed in this tall and narrow sketchbook. I managed to rescue the magpie's beak in the end, and I like how this one came out. The colours are lovely and bright, and the paper's held up really well. There's barely any warping, and nothing has gone through to the other side, so it's excellent quality paper. Just a tiny amount of buckling, but it's barely noticeable, and when I close that book flat, it should go back to normal. I will eventually decorate that inside page, but Lord help me, I'm going to start the second book too. And actually this is the one that I'm most interested in because it is an A5 and it's the size that I generally like for a sketchbook, so I'm doing exactly the same thing, gently folding open that front cover page, and I'll clip that there too so that's not getting in my way. And now I have another first page to start. Here we go! And since he was at the start of my video, here's a drawing of Gandalf I did, from this photo I took a few days ago. My first attempt at the drawing was a failure, so I had to redraw it and really get the shape of him in first. A cross between a sphinx and a loaf of bread. He also has a very triangular shaped head, and he's made up of about 90% fur, so it's all just fluff. I think in the end I got pretty close to his actual body shape, although I annoyingly didn't quite get his face right, and you'll see that a bit later. It's a little bit too long and I didn't really notice it until I'd actually finished the painting, but whatever, maybe I'll redo it again at some point, or I'll just do a little bit and cover over the top of it. I find if the facial features aren't exactly right, then it doesn't really matter how good the rest of the picture is, and I can see as I'm watching myself drawing this now, his face is just a little bit too long around the nose and mouth area. And that's just me critiquing my own work so I can hopefully improve next time. I'm always trying to learn and get better. Otherwise, I'm actually pretty happy with the drawing. I think it turned out really well and his body shape looks really great. He's just got that funny square back when he sits like that. It does make me laugh. And now I'm painting in light layers of watercolour in orangey marmalade colours. It's a little bit brighter than what he is, but I just wanted a nice bright colour. I watered down the first layer so it's not too bright, and then I can build up. The Sennelier paints are really good for glazing. They build up so beautifully and they have this gorgeous luminous quality that I really love about them. Once again, I'm just making up the background because I didn't want to go completely from the photo reference. He's sitting on our worm farm and it's not the most attractive looking thing in the world. The background I did wet on wet, so I painted on some water and then I was just dropping different greens. I could only do a little bit at a time though because, like I said, it's very dry and warm at the moment, so the paper was drying very quickly when I was doing this, and I did actually add a bit too much water in places, which resulted in a bit of cauliflowering because the paper was drying a bit unevenly. You'll see that on the right hand side, that cauliflowering happening, and I'll fix that up a bit later. But now I'm going in with a bit more of a bright colour on Gandalf himself, adding in a bit more detail on his stripes. He really does have beautiful fur, and because it's summer, he's actually shed one of his 2 coats, and that will grow back in the winter, so he'll develop a much larger mane and a lot more fluff. He's a Norwegian forest cat, so he's meant to be in the snow, and this poor guy's going through a heat wave with us at the moment, so I've had to keep him inside and make sure he's staying very hydrated, along with the rest of us, of course. And now to fix up this background a bit with a little more green, and then I'm adding in that yellow-green as a glaze over all of it, just to kind of make everything a bit brighter and more blended together. You can see that the cotton paper is working pretty well, aside from a few little errors that I had there. Now I'm adding in some pen detail, and I'm kind of regretting going around his mouth and eyes with it, so then I got the pencils out again, and I'm just going to colour in a little bit. Not quite so much as I did on the magpie, because I want the watercolour to show through on this one, but it did need some fur detail, especially around the edges against the background, so I'll be using some white pen to add in little bits of fur and make it look more natural. But firstly, I wanted to add in all of his lovely tabby stripes on his face, because that was the main focal point, and it's where I added in the most pencil detail. Once again, they performed nicely on this hot press paper, and I really like this book. It's such a good size, so I'm certainly hoping to fill this one up during the year. I'll link the books and any relevant discount codes in the description below. I know a lot of us are trying not to buy new stuff this year, but I have to say that watercolor sketchbooks can be really hard to find, especially the cotton ones, and a lot of them are hideously expensive, whereas these ones are actually reasonably priced, and you can buy them as singles or as a pair of books, which I quite like. And when I was looking just now, 2 of these books together, the A5 ones, costs around 45 Australian dollars, or $22.50 each, I guess. I think to buy a single one costs a bit more, maybe around 25 to 30. Of course, the prices are always changing, so it's very hard to be accurate on that. But considering the price of some other sketchbooks out there, this seems very reasonable to me. The paper is definitely artist grade quality, being cotton, and it is really nice to use. The sizing has been good in all 4 books that I've used, and I haven't noticed any problems with those. And even though I don't use a lot of hot press paper, I do quite like this because it does still have just enough texture to not be annoying. It also works really well with watercolours and coloured pencils, so it's a very versatile paper so far. I do like the cold press one in the square book too, but it is far more textured, and I don't think I would want to use coloured pencils in that. Plus the books look really beautiful. I love the covers, and it's nice that you don't have to decorate them, they're already done, so that's a bonus. And here's this painting done. I like how bright the colours are on this paper, even though the face is not quite right on the left hand side, but that's because I know what Gandalf was meant to look like. But errors aside, I think the paper's excellent, and I really like this A5 sketchbook. It's got to be my favourite of the 4 of them. No seepage, even though I used a lot of water on this. And a lot of paint too, but it's only buckled slightly, and that should flatten out once I close the book properly again. And I'll get that all nicely closed like that. And when I hold it up, you'll see how the paper has gone pretty flat already, and it just shows that I've painted on a page, and I need to do that with all the others. And here's what I got painted today in these 2 books, starting them both, which is completely insane, but I guess we do these things for YouTube. And they're almost a matching pair with that bright green background. I enjoyed painting in both books, but I really do prefer the A5 size, because it's what I'm used to, a creature of habit I am. But I'll just open this other smaller book, and all 3 of these have that same hot pressed paper in, so you can choose between sizes on these ones, depending on your preference. And then the odd one out is the pink square book here, which I shall bring over with that cold press paper. It's really strange that only one has cold press and the other 3 are hot press. I'd love it if they did an A5 size of the cold press as well as the hot press paper. Maybe one day they'll release a few more different books. But overall, I really like all 4 of them. It's a random collection of sizes, and there is currently only the one option for cold press, which is the square one. But fortunately, I really like a square sketchbook, so I'm happy with this too. And if you want that textured cold press paper, then that is the book for you. It's also not too big, so it's a handy size to have as a sketchbook. But out of these 3, the one that I would choose if I just had to pick one book, definitely the A5. I find that the most useful, but I like that they have a few other smaller sizes, and it's entirely one's preference as to which book is better. It's all the same paper, so that's not a problem. Overall, so far, I think they're lovely high-quality sketchbooks, and I really hope to work in all 4 of these this year. Normally I'd recommend just getting one, but now I have a full set of them, and 2 starting pages today. It's quite nice having started them all because I feel like they're less precious now and that I can actually get into them properly. And I have lots of empty pages to fill. So I'm sure you're going to see at least some of these books in future videos because I will probably work in these quite a lot more. Maybe I can even finish some of them. This one's quite a handy size for putting in a small travel kit. So I'd love to know in the comments which one you think is the best of the 4 of them. I do like the square one too. I hope that they add some more cold press books to their collection. But I hope this review has been helpful if you've been looking at the books and wondering which one to choose. I'm going to have to leave that decision up to you as to which one you think is the best size for your needs. And that's everything I have for today. I'm definitely inspired to get more into these sketchbooks. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up, and you might want to subscribe for more videos. If you want to see me starting the other sketchbooks, here's a couple of previous videos I've done. I hope you're having a fantastic day out there, and I'll see you all again really soon in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!